Have you seen that new movie out about Mr. Rogers and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? If you haven't, it's phenomenal. You've got to check it out. But today I want to talk about the criticism raised in the video was about how he gave birth to the millennials. He gave birth through his unconditional positive regard. He spoiled us. He spoiled us all and made us all brats and selfish, self-centered people. Well, I want to talk a little bit about that today because I don't think it's true. And I want to use YogaPsych to help you see why. Check it out. YogaPsych. Ancient answers for your current problems. Hi, I'm Brett, your favorite shrink, and welcome back to YogaPsych. This is where we're learning, I always want to say a new psychology because it's vastly different than the psychology you know, but it's not new. It's an old psychology. It's a psychology of 4,000 years ago. It's the psychology that comes from the Buddhist, Hindu, and Taoist practices of yoga. Not the hatha yoga thing that we're always seeing and, practicing in yoga studios, but the practice of meditation and the practice of spirituality. And so we could say in a way, this is a psychology of spirituality. Now, I want to get to the video that I was talking about, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It, again, is a phenomenal video. If you haven't seen it, please do, because it really speaks to what a loving and gentle and kind man he was. His vision was to give children, particularly in a scary and confusing world, to give them a sense of love and acceptance. And somehow that got twisted backwards. And somehow we thought that providing unconditional positive regard, providing unconditional love, somehow poisoned a generation of people. Now, it's not true. It's not true in any way, shape, or form. We talk about how giving trophies to kids and helping them feel good about themselves, everybody gets a trophy, has poisoned our kids. Well, that's just crazy thinking. What we're saying in that kind of thinking is that love is not the answer, that loving our children is not the right answer, that love somehow spoils people. It's just not true. We all need love. Now, it is true that we have basic human needs. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in understanding some chakras, sorry about that, in yoga. And the first three of our core human needs need to be met, but they can never bring happiness. And that's what it is we're seeing, that when we give unconditional positive regard to people, to our children, to our family, to the people we love, we're not doing anything wrong, and there's nothing wrong with it. But what you'll see and what you'll already have noticed in your own lives is that it doesn't make them necessarily happy. And we'll talk about why. Have you ever heard or studied anything about the chakras? There's energy systems within the body, according to yoga practices. And these energy systems move from our body base up through our sacrum, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, and crown. And those 7 chakras are said to govern our energy and really provide for us tools for creating balance in our lives. Now, in yoga psychology, we look at those 7 chakras a little bit more psychologically. We look at them a little bit more in terms of understanding who we are. And what we'll see is that the core, the base chakra, is about safety. The next one, the sacrum, is about seeking desires. Sexual desires, physical desires, all of our human desires. We're seeking desires there. And then the third is more about our self-worth and self-esteem. And this is really where Mr. Rogers focused a lot. He focused on helping us feel loved, because that's a human need, and lovable. Because if you don't feel lovable, what you'll do is you'll defend. You'll block out. You'll not allow yourself to feel the love and the kindness and the presence all around you. And so Mr. Rogers really wanted everybody to know that they were both loved and lovable. How is that in any way connected to millennials? Well, what's really interesting as you study these first three chakras from the point of view of a psychological point of view, is that all three of these chakras, their energy and attention are pointed inward. And they create what's called a vayu. A vayu is a traditional word in Hindu Sanskrit meaning wind. And it creates a natural wind inward. And it's really important that we feel loved and lovable. But that is all an inward focus. And in a very significant time in our lives, it's important that we have that foundation set, that we are reassured, that we are loved and we are lovable. Some really interesting research came out of orphanages in Ukraine that housed children by the thousands and gave them food and shelter, provided for their basic needs, but weren't able to provide for this need to be loved and lovable. And they weren't held and they weren't given attention, which is what we talked about last time, and what I also talked about in my book, You Can Be Right or You Can Be Married. They weren't able to give love in attention to these children. And these children died. It was called failure to thrive because they didn't have love. That's how essential love is to our own survival. We have to be loved. And if we are loved, then we can deal with some starvation. We can deal with some danger in our worlds if we have that feeling of love. And that's what Mr. Rogers provided. Now, here's the problem. In that core developmental stages as we're going through, and that's what Mr. Rogers focused on, these really early developmental stages, it's really important to have that as a foundation. But here's the key. It's not going to make you happy. You being loved, particularly as an adult, as you grow out of those childish phases, you being loved, 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 isn't going to make you happy. What? That's so contrary to what we're thinking, what we're expecting, what we're wanting, but it's true. You being loved doesn't bring you joy. It creates a foundation for you, it creates a base. But happiness happens when you love. Joy happens when you love. It's in loving, and I think it's really important to note this, it's in loving yourself and in loving others. It's the giving of love, learning how to give love, that really produces happiness, joy in our lives. And so Mr. Rogers wasn't teaching how we should love others in terms of teaching these children to love. What he was emphasizing was they felt love. And hopefully he was teaching us adults who were watching to give love, because it is our giving of love through attention, through the free gift of our attention, that we find love, that we find happiness, that we find joy. And that's what I want for you. getting love is not going to work. If you're over 6, okay, getting love is not going to be the answer for your happiness. If you're over 6, the key to feeling happy is beginning to give love. Give love to yourself and to others. And that's where we went wrong with millennials. Millennials never learned. They never learned how to give. They only learned how to receive. And that is only going to give you so much. So my charge to you is to be like Mr. Rogers, to give unconditional love and regard to people. Not because it's going to make them happy ultimately. It's going to make them feel secure and feel like some core needs are met. But loving is going to make you happy. And that's what I want. It's for you to be happy. I hope you like this video. If you like the video, like the video. If you want to learn more, subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also get on our podcast, YogaPsych. Again, I'm Brett, your favorite shrink. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care. YogaPsych. Ancient answers for your current problems.